Hello and welcome to UI Chat from The Interface, the monthly show talk about everything Ubiquiti and networking. I'm your host Alex, and once again I'm joined by my co-host Evan McCann. Welcome, Evan.
Welcome. Good to be back.
Yeah.
Got another month of hardware and software to review.
Yeah. So for the title of this episode, I did bounce around. Maybe last week I put in the show notes, finally a quieter month, and I think Ubiquiti must have read that because they, within the last 5 days, they came out with a ton of stuff. Again.
Yeah, you definitely jinxed us.
I think I did, sure. Yeah. I was like, oh, like a nice relaxing month, because last month was very, very busy for Ubiquiti stuff.
Right. As always, yeah. I mean, the big thing is the all the Ultra stuff, but yeah, we'll get into it.
Nice. Before we get into all this stuff, I've got some follow-ups. So you've put in Ultra switches, so the UDR Ultra. So I think we must have mentioned in an episode or two ago the UDR Ultra, and that's now become the UniFi. What do they call it? UniFi Gateway, Cloud Gateway, or something along those lines. Ultra.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. So on last episode, I had just kind of gone through recent leaks and just like usually you can kind of tell some upcoming products based on what's in the UniFi network software, especially the early access ones. They'll have like upcoming products, images, and stuff like that. So yeah, the UDR Ultra, I think we got from an FCC filing. I'm not 100% sure, but I mean, to my understanding, that became the dream. What is it? The Cloud Gateway Ultra. That's the name of the
UCG Ultra. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So that that's one of those. I think I had like 7 or so different products. And the Ultra switches are the other one that we kind of knew about just because they had talked about that at WISPapalooza or some event, I believe, down in South America. Yep. So those two are now out. We do have a few more to add to that list of like stuff we know is coming soon. We have a 16-port Pro Max switch. So we have the 24 and the 48 right now.
Oh, really?
Non-PoE and PoE, those 4 models of the Pro Max. And there's going to be a 16-port version of that's upcoming. At least there's images that show that. So a little bit smaller, a little bit cheaper. And it's going to be interesting where the pricing falls, because I'm assuming it's going to be close to the 24-port Pro switches. Those. So it's like, do you want a little bit more speed or more features? And my cat's freaking out back here.
Nice.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. Do you want more features, more speed, and less interfaces, or it's going to be a weird trade-off between those two. The other one is the NAS Pro. This is something we heard about months ago, maybe last year sometime. There's just kind of more fuel for that fire that the NAS Pro. It's just going to be a bunch of hard drives, and I'm assuming just kind of like mass storage on the network. We don't really know what that product is going to be, or if there's going to be new software to go alongside of it. I would assume so. There's going to be another UniFi application for like managing storage.
That'd be nice. Yeah.
And then the 3 U7 models. So the U7 in-wall, U7 Pro Max, and U7 Enterprise. So that would go along with the U7 Pro is the only one we have now. So all of the other stuff that we mentioned, I think like the UDM Pro Max, the Enterprise UXG model. There's a couple others there that are still we're expecting soon. So I'm sure we'll talk about those probably next month or maybe the following. Yeah.
As someone who deals with a lot of 4K video every day, I'm looking forward to the UNAS Pro because I've got a sort of a hacked together USB-C dongle on my iMac at the moment full of SSDs, so I haven't got around to sorting out a storage solution.
You don't even have like a NAS or anything? You just have like a couple hard drives?
I haven't got around to sorting that out yet, so.
Right, yeah. Well, I know a lot of people recommend Synology. I have a Synology. Anything like that, yeah, it's better than sticking a few hard drives together or using USB. So it'd be nice to see what that product actually is.
Yeah, definitely. I reckon it would look like a MVR Pro sort of thing. I reckon.
Yeah, that's what the image shows. I think it was like 6 or 7 hard drive bays along the front, just like the
sweet,
the UNVR Pro.
Nice, some interesting stuff coming soon. When you said Switch Pro Max 16, I was like, oh, have I missed a new product announcement? No, it's just one of the leaks.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not official, but yeah, it's in the latest network EA version, so we'll see if it's coming soon.
Sweet. Just before we get started with the Ubiquiti news, thanks everyone who's been listening to this podcast. Me and Evan really look forward to coming back every month to provide our takes on the latest Ubiquiti updates. We would really appreciate it if you could review this show on the podcast app you're listening in, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or even YouTube. If you're watching our gorgeous faces on YouTube, make sure to leave a comment and hit that like button. It really does help other people find this show. Without further ado, let's get back to the Ubiquiti news. I'm going to let you run with this one. It's the FBI removed Russian malware from EdgeRouters. I did see a tweet from Marcus as well. You've linked that in the show notes as well, just clarifying what that meant. Could you just run us through that? Because I don't know much about this just yet.
Yeah, so kind of out of nowhere, the U.S. Department of Justice just kind of released this news that they had removed Russian malware. I don't think that they got super specific about what the malware was, or they didn't give us all the details, but the details we do know is it was basically older edge routers, especially ones that were on the internet and using default credentials. So if you're running years old firmware with default credentials, you could have potentially been part of, I think it was like a botnet. It was used for spear phishing and credential harvesting against targets of intelligence interest to the Russian government, such as the U.S., foreign governments, military, security, and corporate organizations.
Okay.
So the interesting thing is the FBI was authorized by a U.S. court to go ahead and just kind of deal with this. I don't think that they didn't notify the people that were running these networks until after they had gone and patched the issue or removed the kind of botnet that was running on them. So they just said, hey, by the way, we handled this for you. Update your firmware, change your password, etc. This is kind of concerning, but it's also kind of the reality of kind of insecure old software running on the public internet with default credentials. Like that is among the worst security posture you can be. So Marcus, he's the head of cybersecurity for Ubiquiti on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. He commented on it and said, no, there's this isn't like a security vulnerability. There is no CVE for running years old firmware with default credentials with ports open to the internet. So if he was kind of naming and shaming, saying the people that were vulnerable to this, it was kind of their fault. I kind of tend to agree with that. But it is really concerning, and probably the more interesting thing is the fact that the FBI intervened, took care of it, and then notified people, which is kind of interesting.
Do you remember back in, I don't know when it was, maybe like 2017, there was an AirMax vulnerability, not a vulnerability, but a similar sort of thing, where it was if you had one AirMax radio, I think AirMax M, connected to the public internet with a public IP, there was like this weird, like, I don't know how to describe it, but one radio got infected and then could infect subnets beneath it. It would change SSIDs, it would change the passwords, like it would change SSIDs to profanities and different things. I remember dealing with that when I was working at the WISP. I don't know if you remember seeing that, but
I don't remember that one specifically. But yeah, the Ars Technical article about this, they pointed out that like Cisco, Netgear, TP-Link, they've had similar things like within the past year. It's happened to Ubiquiti in the past. It's just kind of the reality of things, and that's why you need to be careful about what you expose to the internet, because not only if you can reach it from outside the network, so can everyone else on the internet, and so can Russians that are trying to use you for spear phishing and stuff like that. So you got to be very careful when you expose things to the internet.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, I agree with what Marcus said. It's like it's kind of on you for running. Well, it is on you for running old firmware if that's what you're doing. So update your stuff. That's the message today. The next one is the UWC, the UniFi World Conference Tour, and I think that's where the Ultra devices were sort of previewed in South America. I think it was this one of these events last year. Basically, the big keynotes, like big conferences, big keynotes are taking place all over the place. So Chicago, London, which I'm hopefully going to go to, Munich, Sweden and Dubai and different places. And basically, you get some free lunch, which is the headlining thing for me. But 3, you can apply to go and you'll get approved. And basically, Robert Perry will be there, and there's some products on show and potentially some products we've not seen before, judging by what's happened at the events in prior times. So it's interesting to see that Robert Perry's meeting and greeting the community. It's quite nice to see.
Yeah, and I think this is something Ubiquiti used to do a lot more. If you just search UWC or UniFi World Conference, you see like 2015. You know, I think this used to be a yearly thing for them. That was kind of back before I paid close attention to the company. But yeah, it's good to see Robert out there. It's good to see these kind of public events. I think it's a great opportunity to get people together and kind of. I don't think Ubiquiti is ever going to give us like a roadmap per se, but just kind of a more organized way to, you know, introduce new products and kind of explain their direction. And yeah, obviously free lunch, that's the headlining thing. But yeah, it's interesting. I applied. It seems like they're really targeting people that have purchasing power. I mean, obviously if and bigger content creators, like I think Cody already got his acceptance that he's going to be going. I'm not sure if he's going to the Chicago one or which one.
He is, I think, yeah.
Yeah, Chicago. But yeah, so it's I'm curious what kind of news we're going to get out of that. It's the first one is Chicago, March 26th, 2024, and then yeah, they go over to Europe and Dubai, Singapore, etc.
Nice.
But yeah, I'm curious. Even if I can't go, I really want to see what comes out of that.
Well, yeah, because as I said, that the Ultra stuff was sort of previewed. They've got the cameras that haven't even seen the light of day yet, and also the Swiss Army knife was previewed at those events. So, be interested to see what happens.
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay. Not as much hardware. Well, kind of is. There's not much major hardware as there has been previously, but there's still quite a bit to get through. So, this is pretty hot off the press. I think last few days the videos went out from Chris and Cody. They sort of get access to this hardware ahead of time now. So we've got the Cloud Gateway Ultra, UCG Ultra, so Cloud Gateway Ultra, $129. It's essentially just another cloud console with built-in. Has it got? I don't think it's got built-in Wi-Fi. It's just a router, isn't it? I think. So just standard routing, but it's got multi-WAN load balancing. So you've got 2 WAN ports. You can also use the LTE. Hotspot device, and also you can power it from USB-C. So it's quite interesting. And then there's some details. There's some other details that have come out since that device has been launched. We've found out that it's only got a 1 gig backplane as well. So it's there's some limiting features, but it's quite a good price point, to be honest.
Yeah, it's actually the cheapest. So yeah, what's interesting to me is comparing to the Express, which is $149, and the Dream Router, which is $199. This is $129, at least US pricing. I don't know what it is for you in the UK, but so it's even cheaper than the Express, and it's the weird thing is what does Ultra mean? Because to normal people, Ultra is like the high end model, but to Ubiquiti, it's the we're giving you a lot for your money. It's like the bang for the buck model, I guess, and that's kind of what the Ultra switches are and all the other Ultra things. So cheap price. Yeah, the backplane limitation, we can get into that a bit more. But I think for what you're spending, you know, it makes the Express and the Dream Router, you know, if this is the kind of thing you're looking for, where you don't care about cameras, you don't care about, you know, the things that the Dream Router can do for you, or the Express is too limiting, you can actually spend less money and get more in some ways. So the Cloud Gateway Ultra, it has a 2.5 gig WAN port. It has 4 gigabit LAN ports. It can run the network application for over 30 devices, so it doesn't have that really low device limitation management, you know, for managing other switches and APs. You can run a much larger network with the Cloud Gateway Ultra than you can with the Express. And it does do gigabit IPS IDS, so it's a lot for $129. It's definitely kind of the new star of the kind of low end lineup in my mind. But yeah, did you read much about the backplane?
A little bit. So I saw some people talking about it. It's basically 1 gig shared over all the LAN ports, essentially. So
I think it's similar to the way that the the Dream Machine Pro and the Dream Machine SE, the larger rack mount ones, where they have those LAN ports. So those have like 10 gig interfaces, and the SE has a 2.5 gig WAN RJ45 port, but the like 8 gigabit LAN ports on the front, they have they're limited to a single gigabit connection. So you're not going to really get a lot of throughput from those LAN ports out to the WAN or those kind of things. And this kind of has the same thing, where it has 4 gigabit LAN ports, but they share a single gigabit link to the chipset or to the system on a chip. So you're not going to get, even though it does have a 2.5 gig WAN port, you know, you're limited because the only way you can kind of fully utilize, like if you had a 2.5 gig WAN connection, the only way you can fully utilize that would be through those LAN ports.
Yeah.
And you're limited to a gigabit there. So it's like, why?
Yeah.
I'm assuming it was somehow cheaper or made sense for them to include the 2.5 gig. Like, that's good to see, but then to cap it there and say, we have a 2.5 gig interface, you can only use, what, 2/5 of it there? It's interesting.
I said there was two WAN ports. I think that's not correct. There's one WAN port.
Well, no, one can be reamped.
Oh,
one
really?
Can be remapped. Yeah. So they have the 4 gigabit LANs. One of those can be remapped as a second wired LAN. So you could have dual WAN. And then, you mentioned you can also add the LTE. So I guess you could technically have 3 LANs or dual WAN and have the LTE backup.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that big asterisk of you won't get multi-gigabit speeds, I think for 129 it's great, and there's a lot to like about it.
Yeah, 100%. And it doesn't have any PoE for any APs. This hasn't got built-in Wi-Fi, so while it may be cost-effective, you may have a more messy setup potentially. Depends on where you want to use this and how you want to use it. You may have to have more power supplies than you would have with the UDR, for example. But obviously you don't get gigabit speeds on the UDR, so yeah. Right.
And I mean, and this is cheaper than a cloud key on its own. So if you're looking to get started, I think this is a strong contender. It makes
agreed.
Like it's weird that they have the UXG Lite, UXG Pro, but they put such a kind of a price premium or like a feature deficit on those. So like you really have to pay a lot more if you want to build things piece by piece. If you go all in and get a cloud gateway, you save a lot of money and kind of have the convenience of everything all in one. If you want to build it, I want just a router, I want just my controller. Either you have to do a lot of work yourself to like kind of set that up or figure out how to piece it together, or you're just going to be missing out on features or spending more money.
Well, yeah, also they're probably targeting the home market, because when I've spec'd up solutions like as cheaply as possible for people, it always ends up being too much. And they never want to go for it because they don't see the value in it. But if this is like $129 and you get a switch built in and a controller, and it's all like one device and it's all they need, you just got to add the AP somewhere else, which there are some APs available now for quite cheaply. This would be quite a good solution, and you could just use PoE injectors and it wouldn't be awful to bring the cost down. So yeah, I think it's a good addition. The Ultra lineup's interesting. Some of their marketing, they've said they're targeting it towards emerging markets, emerging international markets, or something along those lines. Sorry. So I guess like just less well-off countries potentially. So
yeah, I think South America is what they mentioned. Maybe possibly Africa, Asia, maybe as well. Because their big markets are obviously Europe and America, and I think these are more targeted at everywhere else.
Yep. Cool. And there's some information you found out. Quad-core A53, 3 gigabytes of RAM, and 16 gigabytes of storage. And also
they didn't have those specs. Like when they first released the video and the news came out of this product, they didn't have any specs about CPU. They did confirm it in the community forums, and then they added it to the spec sheet since then. Yes. And that's also in the community forums is where the gigabit backplane was discussed.
That's correct. Yeah.
So if you look through the release thread there, you'll see their comments.
Yep. Oh, they did. To be fair, someone said that. Yeah.
Yeah, my favorite part of that is when they were discussing the backplane, someone said, like, why would you do this? Why would you include a 2.5 gig interface and then limit it with the gigabit backplane? It said, well, the console itself can make use of it like when downloading firmware. So yeah, you can, like that 2.5 gig interface can download stuff. It's just it won't get to your LAN beyond gigabit. So interesting use case there for multi-gig.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? I don't understand that. But there must be some weird reason they had to do it. I guess we'll never know. So.
Yeah, I think the real reason is this is so cheap that they just had to go... I don't know who made... Like, if they just bought like a pre-built board or Qualcomm had this chip ready to go that was super cheap and kind of very targeted towards this kind of use case. I think that it was kind of out of their hands. Either they had to buy more expensive components or they had to deal with this limitation. But, if it was, $159 or $200 and didn't have that limit, would people be as interested in it? I don't know.
Yeah. Cool. The next one is another Ultra device. Well, devices actually. So it's the Ultra switches. Again, these are very well priced. And the big thing for these is you can buy them without an AC adapter. So the very basic Ultra switch. These are, but we'll just go over what they are first. Very small, compact switches. And the big thing for me is they've got PoE out on all ports. Like if you think about the US Lite 8, you only get 4 ports PoE. If you're after PoE ports, that's all you want, and as cheap as possible. These are brilliant for that. So all of them can be powered by BT PoE, so PoE++, and you can choose the AC adapter you want. So you either get no AC adapter for $129, a 60-watt adapter for $159, and then you also get a 210 AC adapter for $229, I believe. So they are essentially just all the same switches, aren't they? Just come with different adapters.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one switch. It's just 3 different options for power. So it's no power adapter, a 60-watt brick, or I think it's 210. I wonder if they'll sell those separately, because it seems like the switch is otherwise identical.
It might be cheaper just to buy it to buy a PoE, like a BT PoE, because that seems a lot of money for a. Seems like a lot of money for a power supply.
Yeah, you're adding $100 to go from no power supply to the highest power, but that would give you 200 plus watts of output there. So it's interesting. It seems like it's kind of like the Flex, but just larger. The reason I think that is they confirm that there's no spanning tree, rapid spanning tree, and there's no link aggregation. I didn't see it. Maybe it's in the thread somewhere or I missed it, but I would assume there's no, in the same way that the Flex Mini, I believe, has like no command line interface. The adoption process is a little bit different. Isn't that the Flex Mini?
That is correct. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the Flex Mini has the same limitation. No spanning tree, no link aggregation. There's a few feature differences. So I think this is kind of like I think of it as kind of a larger Flex Mini or larger Flex.
Well, yeah.
And just, it's really just if you need cheap and PoE, and the flexibility of powering it via PoE in, you really need PoE++ in to get much of the pass through. But yes, there's a lot of asterisks about the power, but overall, yet another cheap switch. I just think that the lack of spanning tree and the lack of link aggregation and maybe a few other features, that's going to definitely trip people up, and you kind of have to pay attention to those little details when you're looking at the alternatives around that price.
I can see it used in 2 places: either the home, which you could power with a PoE brick or something, if you had one, just a standard BT PoE, or if you think of like offices, have they got a place in the building they want like a few cameras? All you'd need is, instead of running like 8 cables or 7 cables, just run one cable with BT, and then that would have enough PoE budget to power 7 cameras, I'm sure, in one area. That's a good cheap way of getting Ethernet to one place with PoE.
Right, but it's $30 more than the Flex, and the Flex is it's 5 ports. So one of those would be your PoE in, and you'd have 4 out. So the Flex kind of fits in that same situation where, if you have 3-4 cameras or APs, and you want to have just a single cable run back to your main network, this is another option for that. If you have maybe a few more unpowered devices, otherwise you're going to need AC input to get the higher PoE output there.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Another option for those kind of setups, yeah.
Yeah, it looks cool. And then again, with the ethos of being Ultra, you can mount it various ways. There's a magnetic adapter for it that I think comes with it. There's a wall mount, ceiling mount, different things. You can screw it in different places. So there's some interesting mounting options. That's again coming back to the fact that it's an Ultra device, which is quite cool.
Yeah, they seem to be all about the magnetic mounting lately.
Yeah, it's cool. So I'm going to try and pick one of these up when they come to the UK. So that'd be quite nice. We got
Yeah.
some. Go on.
You're gonna get one? Did you get one of the cloud gateway?
No, they're not available either. So.
Okay.
It says coming soon.
TBD.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess we didn't mention that. I think these are U.S. only. Are they in Canada or any other territories? I don't know.
I believe they're available everywhere, but in some areas they'll just be
not for
coming
you?
soon. Yeah.
Right.
It's listed on the store. The price is there. Just says coming soon on it, and a few things have done that recently. So I'll get it when I get it. So we're just going to jump back to the WISP nature of Ubiquiti for a second. This wasn't announced anywhere. I just happened to browse the store once a week, roughly. Just glance over the whole store to see if there's anything new, because otherwise you won't know. This is quite cool, I think. This is the Wave Pico. So for those uninitiated, the Wave line is Ubiquiti's 60 gigahertz point-to-multipoint platform, and this is their smallest device. I believe it's similar in size to the Nanobeam 16, that little tiny 5 gigahertz device. And this has quite a short range. I think this will work quite well. So it says 1.3 kilometers on the Wave AP and 0.9 kilometers on the Micro AP. I think this will work quite well in quite built-up areas or business parks, like a little compact area where there's lots of things you need to get internet to in one little space. So I think that'll work quite well for that. But it's $179 and it will do maximum of 2 gigabit per second. It's got the 5 gigahertz radio as well, and it looks quite nice actually. I think that'd be quite a good solution for WISPs looking to put fiber-like services in compact areas that are quite tricky to serve. So.
Yeah, and it's just the Pico. Pico is the only new one. So now they have Pico, Nano, Pro, long range. They have a lot of different options for CPE.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Pro one's quite expensive. It's like nearly $500, I think. Oh, it's $600. But it has got 15 kilometers of range, so yeah. Yeah,
significantly more range, 5 gigahertz backup. I'm happy to see the Wave line get built out. They didn't seem to announce this or make a big show about it, but yeah, there it is. Oh. And then they also have the mount for it as well, right? Or the mount.
Well, they've got the mount for one of the access points. So the 8P Micro, they've made like a 360 degree mount essentially. You can mount 4 AP Micros back to back essentially, to cover a 360 degree coverage area, I guess, like a sector arrangement. Judging, okay. I'm not sure what the front to back ratio is on 60 gigahertz. I'd imagine these are quite well insulated. Just judging from what I've done with 5 gigahertz before, but I'm sure 60 gigahertz is fine. But that's quite cool. I quite like that solution. I can imagine that being quite handy in a small town or something.
Yeah, specifically for like what you were mentioning, like a business park, or when you have a bunch of clients close distance. 60 gigahertz is great. That mount option is interesting. And front to back ratio. I think there's a lot of things to dig into before you kind of use this, but I think that would be a great solution potentially, if it all performs and it's insulated enough. I would be worried about interference and availability of spectrum. It's usually fine with 60 gigahertz, but when you have that many radios close together, that could be a concern.
Yeah, it's cool. Some more WISP stuff. So there's this new power injector I noticed on the store again. It's called the UISP Dual Power Injector. It's essentially a PoE injector that's powered from one of the transport connectors, and it powers two 48 volt passive devices. What it's made for is the Wave AP. So the Wave AP has 10 gig SFP for data, and then a 2.5 gig PoE port for power. But essentially, what they're saying you should do instead is run like if you've got the UISP Power Pro, it's got tons of transport outputs on it. You could power up a couple of these, power 2 APs off that, and then just run fiber up the tower for your data. And then you wouldn't have the issue of like water getting in the Ethernet cables or long runs like reducing the power. You just run this transport connector up to it, which is quite a nice solution, and they're quite well priced, I think. But that's quite a interesting way of doing things. I think that'll work quite well, because obviously fiber is a lot more stable than Ethernet would be at long distances. So
Yeah, and good to see them expanding on transport. Yeah, everything we said before still holds true. Like it's kind of disappointing it's proprietary, but this is kind of what I had in mind.
Yeah.
Where this solves a problem for WISP, where it's not always easy to properly design a tower, get power everywhere, run fiber, run Ethernet to all the places, ground things. So if this helps people with that, I think it's a great thing to look into.
Yeah, especially on some of our towers we had that were really exposed. We had so many problems with Ethernet getting water in it and stuff, and if we had this sort of thing available, that would have been so cool. So yeah, I do wonder if you could power up anything else from it, so like Cambium stuff. I'd imagine you probably can. It's just 48 volts.
Yeah, do they say like there's a lot of annoying details about like the pin out of the PoE, but it looks like just straight up 48 volt DC. So I would assume any APs like you mentioned Cambium, any other things that could run off 48 volt, which is pretty standard.
Yeah, it's 100 watt power maximum. So yeah,
and it's nice that it's 2.5 gig too. So you're not most power injectors are gigabit. So nice to see that.
It doesn't really matter with this, to be honest, because it's not going to deliver any data. It's just there's no. If you get what I mean, there's no. I don't know why they mentioned it's 2.5 gig, but it doesn't really matter. It's just it's just a power injector, isn't it? So.
Well, yeah, that's what would be the point? Is it the two devices? So there's two PoE out ports.
Yeah.
Would that be a local connection at 2.5 gig between those two devices? I mean, if you're powering two APs, I don't understand the use case there. But maybe if one of those,
I think
was
it's a
like
way
a
of
router or a switch. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think the purpose is just to reduce the amount of runs up the tower. Because if you can power two APs off one cable and then run fiber back down again, otherwise you'd be running 4 cables for 2 APs. All you got to do now is run 3. I guess you save 1, but yeah. I think it's just a way. I think it's just a way, as I said, of making sure you don't have water ingress in Ethernet cables. Yeah. That would be a pain to fix. So, but then you can also power other stuff off that as well. So, and also you're saving Ethernet ports on UISP switches. And the other thing would be that. That's another thing. If you're after a tower that's completely 100% UISP based, you can't power any 48 volt stuff off it. It's all 27 volts. While the UISP Wave stuff can be powered off 27 volts, I think it's better suited to 48 volts, and that also lends itself nicely to the AirFiber XG as well. They can also be powered off passive 27 volts, but I think there's a few features on those devices like a heater built in that won't function unless it's powered by 48 volts. So I guess this is a nice way of getting 48 volts out of the UISP stack and then using fiber for data. Actually, that's quite a good thought, actually. So yeah, I think that's what it's for. So yeah. I don't know if you saw this one. I was just browsing the store as I do like once or twice a week, just because it's fun. I was surprised about the name. It's an AmpliFi device, this one. So you look at the product code, is AFI AmpliFi, and also if you look at the images, it's an AmpliFi cable, which is really odd. I don't know why it's under the AmpliFi branding, but I've got a similar device. I've got a similar cable to this. I've got a cable that has a little display on it to tell you how much power is being drawn. But it's interesting to see that Ubiquiti have launched their own. I can't work out why, unless they're transitioning AmpliFi to becoming like a accessories manufacturer and away from doing Wi-Fi stuff. I don't really know. But
yeah, I don't know. The little it reads out how much power is going through the cable. That's the little display. I mean, that's a cool feature, and yeah, it's not unique to them. I also don't know why this is a AmpliFi branded thing. I do know, at least in the US store, there's a third tab. They used to, ever since they did the rebrand, they have the UniFi and UISP toggle kind of in the upper right there next to the search box. Yeah. Now there's an AmpliFi toggle. So yeah, who knows? We were kind of thinking maybe AmpliFi is going away. Maybe it's not. I mean, if this is a new product in that world, maybe there's going to be more AmpliFi products as well.
Yeah, I can't find any. Usually in their marketing images, there's also there's a use case or a deployment example. This doesn't have this. It's just got phone images. In my head, I think they're probably transitioning AmpliFi to be away from Wi-Fi stuff, and just using UniFi for that brand because it's a stronger brand, and maybe going to like accessories and stuff. I don't know. Weird. But
Yeah. And now, is pricing wise, I mean, they have a 2 meter, 4.5 meter, 7 meter, and a really short one. I mean,
someone on Twitter was complaining
premium.
Someone on Twitter was complaining it's only USB 2, but this is meant for power delivery more than anything else, isn't it? So,
yeah, it's similar. Apple does the same thing. I have a 2 meter, like a 6 foot. It's only USB 2 speeds, but it's really just for delivering power. Of course, it doesn't have a little display to show you how much power is coming through it, but a little bit pricey for what you're getting, but cool. And yeah, I guess we'll have to stay tuned to see what AmpliFi is going to be.
And what's weird to me is if you buy the 0.3 or 2 meters, it does 480 megabits per second data. But if you buy the 4.5 or 7 meter, it does no data, charging only. On the
well, yeah, I guess maybe it's a limitation of USB 2, and they're not running enough pins over that long of a cable to have data transfer. I don't know. I'm not super good with USB. It's a very complicated world.
USB-C was designed to be simple, but I think other people got their hands on it, and it's become more complicated than life itself. So,
well, here's AmpliFi to save the day and make it simple.
I couldn't work out if this was new or not, but I think it is. It's the Precision Rack Mount Kit, 20 pack, and I can't work out what it's for. It's like to help you align things better. It says aligned cage. It says snap-in insert with 2 vertically aligned cage nuts, designed to ensure uniform rack installation, so make things look nicer, I guess. But it's $50 for 20. It's a bit pricey, but
yeah. So they have the toolless mini rack, and that's the one where it's just like kind of like shelves in a way. There's 6 U's, and you just kind of slide the product in. I don't think they have any cage nuts on that, right? I mean, I'm looking at the product image. I don't see any. So maybe they're they have a bunch of other rack related stuff. They have the OCD panels, the blank inserts, dust cover. They have rack mount accessories for a bunch of their products, but yeah, they don't have anything that has these kind of open squares, just kind of that's kind of what a standard rack would look like, where you have to finagle the little, I don't know if you've ever had to do that. It always kind of hurts your hand or you need like a good little tool for that. But if this makes that process simple, where putting in cage nuts to rack gear, if this just is a simple little thing to get something racked, I don't know if I'd spend $50 to get 20 of them, but I think that's a nice thing to have for some people.
Yeah, I use rack studs for my stuff. Seems to work quite well. So
yeah, those are kind of the gold standard in my mind. Those are really nice.
Yeah, they're very good. These seem a bit pricey. I'm not sure how well these will sell, but yeah, cool.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me wonder if they're going to introduce either a larger rack or like they have that toolless mini rack. Maybe they're going to have one that this goes with. So maybe this just came out first. We'll see.
Yeah. So that's all the hardware. Not as much as we've had before, which is quite nice. Next one is software. So we've got UniFi Network we've got UniFi Network 8.1.104. This has since been replaced with 1.107, I believe. So we saw 104 about a month ago. Just lots of improvements like site score and different things in there, and an easy way to see networks and viewers and things.
Yeah, and the most exciting, these two releases, it seems like they're doing a lot. So yeah, you mentioned the network viewer and site score, which is kind of that kind of gives like a qualitative grade on how secure you are. I'm not sure what the site score is. Did you know what that was?
Yes, it's like it takes all the settings and things you've set on your controller and gives you a score, like a B, C, D thing, and says you could do this to improve your site score. Basically just advice, a nice interface for advice. In recent versions they've removed it temporarily because there were some issues with it. The current EA version, I think 1.107, they've removed it, but in 104 it was there. It seems to work okay. I just think, I don't know, like different advice to do different things, like enable certain features and things. So
yeah, and the other one that is really nice is they rotated the topology view finally. So especially for larger networks, you kind of had this big long vertical list you kind of had to scroll through, so they finally allowed you to rotate that, which is really nice. But the much more exciting stuff to me is all the kind of hardcore-ish, for UniFi, hardcore networking features. So they finally allowed you to have like a custom NAT pool. So if you have multiple IP addresses and you want this network to go to this public IP or this device to go to this public IP and everyone else to use something, this larger range of public IP addresses, that was kind of flexibility you didn't have in UniFi before. So that's a big change. I'm excited to dig into the kind of details once that feature is finalized. They also did L3 network isolation and device isolation, ACLs. So that's kind of a more in-depth networking feature that you wouldn't find in UniFi in the past. So that's another big change in features that they're adding to UniFi. And then in 107, they added OSPF. So OSPF is kind of it's a dynamic routing protocol. And that's something that, they do have the traffic routes, and you could always make static routes, but you never could do OSPF or any kind of big dynamic routing that people are used to for most networking devices. So OSPF there, and they did confirm BGP is coming. So OSPF, BGP, ACLs, custom NAT pools. It seems like they're really going hard on pushing UniFi up as far as like long-standing limitations. So I'm happy to see those 4, and there's a lot of other stuff in these releases that is good, but those are the ones that I'm paying attention to.
Yeah, I've only ever used BGP and OSPF in a sort of a WISP environment. How would you use it in a enterprise environment? I guess for redundancy and different things, or?
Yeah, I think we don't really have that full picture yet.
Okay.
Because UniFi traditionally has been like a single site, single router, add some switches, add some APs. And in that kind of network, you don't need OSPF. You'd only need OSPF if you have multiple gateways. So if you have either, a larger business with multiple buildings, multiple sites, and you use OSPF to route, to learn the routes to all of those different subnets. It's just a different way to do it. But once you have multiple gateways, these are the kind of features you need. Same thing with ACLs. That's just a way to secure your traffic and limit them. It's kind of similar to firewall rules, but kind of more on the switch level, putting that very simply. But it's just these are tools that we haven't had in UniFi, and it makes me interested in their direction, because if they're starting to add these features, I think they're going to add more in that area, and they're going to make UniFi sites with multiple gateways. And I'm curious to see like where they're headed with all this, but all of that is kind of pointing me towards they're trying to compete with like a pfSense or kind of a more in-depth, serious networking tool. They're not just looking at home users; they're looking at businesses, I think.
Yeah, multiple gateways would be quite interesting, wouldn't it? Be quite a unique way of doing it.
And they like shadow mode. That was something that they never had before. But like all these features are, if you look at the direction they're heading over the past 6 months, year, it's all, give the stuff that businesses need, and then sell it to them and say, hey, we don't have licensing, we have all these features, we're so much easier to use than Cisco, or however they want to sell it. But I think that's coming up.
Sweet, yeah. There's also some more stuff in 107. You got UPnP and port forwarding, a viewer page on the network viewer page. You got inner space was now added to network application servers. So in code that just means self-hosted and Hostify. I've installed it on my server and it works, so it's quite nice. They just added a tab for it in the bottom left, which is quite nice, not a separate app. Some DHB improvements, leases and things. There's also this thing called AI logs. No idea what that means, but I guess we'll see what that means. But there's lots of cool stuff.
Add AI to everything.
Yeah. Lots of cool stuff in there. I agree, like the way they're going. So
the other thing is IPv6 got a lot of love, which is another thing that they've been kind of behind on. IPv6 was there kind of in a very fragile, limited state. They've kind of built out IPv6, so it's kind of better late than never, I guess, on that. But OSPF is the same. Like, I never thought I'd see OSPF in UniFi, so I'm curious to see where they go.
No, I don't think a lot of people did. So yeah. Awesome. Some good stuff coming to UniFi. So very quick update about UniFi Mobile Router, the UMR. So we've got 1.9.6. We've now got port forwarding on the UMR. I've yet to test that out. Need to have a look at that. Got GPS toggle. I guess you can turn on and off the GPS because it does have your town on the screen, which is a bit annoying. Multi-WAN feature. I guess that means you can have Ethernet and LTE as the WAN for the device, and also you got local web interface improvements and different bits in there. So quite a small update to that. The UMR is still a bit of a weird device in terms of its pricing. Like you have to have a subscription for it. So whenever I see a Protect update, I always get a bit excited because I think Protect's my favorite thing that Ubiquiti does. I use the Protect stuff all the time. This was awesome, this update. So this came out again around about a month ago. We got support for so much stuff. So for the G4, G5 and AI, the cameras can now detect animals, but also different types of animals, so cat, dog, cow, sheep, horse, deer and bear. It works quite well actually. My G4 cameras pick up the fact that it sees animals. It doesn't quite pick up the fact that what type of animals they are. Doesn't quite work on the G5s yet for some reason, but it's pretty cool though. It doesn't seem to be much margin for error, which is quite clever. So also audio detections, you can pick up a baby crying or car horns or different things. And then the AI series can now recognize different types of vehicles. So it says car, van, truck, bus, motorcycle, bike, SUV. And then further down that road, the AI series only can pick out the color of the vehicle as well, which is awesome. So should make things filtering different things quite easy, which is quite cool. I like to see when and where my cats go, which is quite funny. So I just filter by animal and then I see what the cats do. Yeah.
Yeah, have you said you have what, G4 cameras, or do you have any of the AI?
I have
cameras?
A mix of G3, G4, G5. I have one AI camera, the 360, but weirdly the 360 is the only exception when it comes to vehicle classification for some weird reason. I guess to do with the field of view, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe the image is too warped or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting, and that's all. The other thing with Protect, is this still EA?
No, this is GA.
Okay, this is GA.
Yeah.
Did the feature where you can specify your console by IP, did that come to iOS? I know that was Android only, I think last time we talked.
I believe it is on iOS now, but I haven't managed to find it on my phone though, because I've got all the EA updates on my phone, test flight, but I haven't managed to find it just yet.
Okay.
I'd imagine.
Yeah, it's either, I'd assume, already out. I think I saw something fly by a few weeks ago about that. But yeah, this seems like a huge feature release, which is nice to see for Protect.
Yeah, there's also a dark mode, which lots of people like, which is nice.
Thank God we're saved.
Cool. We also got UniFi OS 3.2.12. This is one of those little updates for all the consoles, like the UNVR, the UDM devices. They all have the same feature essentially. Just some little fixes in here, like it says fixed speed on SFP ports when the module has a faulty EEPROM. I guess that's a chip on the SFP port potentially. SFP module, sorry, but very, very minor update. Available for all the devices now. So.
Yeah, and we didn't have it in our list to talk about, but I know that I think the Express finally got 3.2. I'm trying to find that release now. Yeah. 3.2.5. Because the Express was released, I think, back in November, and it was stuck on, I think it was the 3.1 release. So all the stuff that came to 3.2, that was about a month ago. I think it was right around when we recorded, or maybe just right after. So I don't know if we mentioned it last time, but Express is on 3.2.5. And it's still lagging, so it didn't get. I correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it got 3.2.12.
I don't think it did. I think that was the only one that was missing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm curious if the Express is going to lag behind the other consoles, and maybe the Ultra will too. I don't know. It seems like they have kind of a process where the larger consoles, like the Dream Machine Pro, are kind of the first wave, and then maybe the Express and the Cloud Gateway Ultra will be after that. And then the UXG will get it when we get to it. And same thing with the feature you mentioned where Interspace wasn't on self-hosted controllers right away. I think that's their new method where they'll just kind of delay a feature a month or two for their lower priority platforms maybe.
Yeah, I think so. Cool. I think that's all the software we've got for this month. Just quickly, we're going to look at anything else we've been working on and also the other sections. There's a few items in here. I think me and you are probably the most common people to visit techspecs.ui.com simply for marketing images. I know I visit it most times in the week. But I noticed they've added this compare table thing. I'm not sure how you feel about that, because that's sort of your sort of unique thing on your website. But you can now just compare compare devices quite easily on the TechSpecs website. So.
I love that.
Oh yeah.
I'm so happy that they did techspecs.ui.com. Like, it's really nice to have that kind of centralized place to go.
Yeah.
And yeah, the new, I don't know if anything else changed, but that new compare table, it's something that I've wanted to build something like that for a long time, and I just it didn't find a way to do it and didn't really put in the time.
Yeah.
But the way that you can dynamically filter and say, okay, I want to look at all the 24-port switches, and let me just see the common specs for that. You can drag them around.
It's cool.
It's really, really well done. So I'm really happy they did that, and I couldn't care less if people come to me less for comparison tables, because those are a pain to make, and they should really come from the vendor in my mind. So I'm really, really happy to see that, and I wish other vendors were kind of aggressive towards improving their documentation and making things easier to compare like that. And you mentioned better images. What changed there? So
if you go to marketing, it's only on some of the items, but on the store pages, there used to be these deployment images, and they always used to be really low res and quite low quality. Now on some of the product pages, they've now got those images in a larger format, basically, which they're useful for making thumbnails and stuff for me, because they always used to be really rubbish quality. So not on all of them, but it's on a handful of them at the moment. I can't quite find an example, but I'll put them on screen when I edit this video. But I think something like the UK Ultra's got it, I think, but other devices haven't. So it's interesting the fact that they've now allowing more marketing information, sort of better images and things, because it makes content creation a bit easier, if not anything else. So
right, yeah, that, and it seems like they seem to be more proactive with updating support articles too. That's the other thing that I've noticed. They've rearranged that whole like help.ui.com world a few times over the past year. But I like for new things, like when they released the Ultra switches, and those Ultra switches didn't have spanning tree or link aggregation. Those help articles were actually kind of like updated with the release of those products, where before maybe that wasn't mentioned or wasn't mentioned quickly. So always good to see all the help articles, the community forums aren't the only place to turn. You have the tech specs, the help articles, and all the other stuff that they have. Yeah,
definitely agreed. It's good that they're improving that. The very last thing I want to get to, I saw this. I thought this was really weird how it works. So the cloud, not the cloud, the UniFi cable internet modem thing. I thought it was really weird that the ISPs had managed to push an update by accident to the modems, essentially, and Ubiquiti had to prevent it. So I think this was one of the team, they've used their UI team handle to do it. It says, earlier this week, some ISPs pushed a firmware update to the part of the UCI whose firmware they control without notifying Ubiquiti. This required firmware 1.3 on the part of the UCI that we do control. Our safety mechanisms kicked in order to update our part of the UCI, even though 1.3 was still in EA. This prevented the impacted UCIs from failing entirely. We are still working on promoting 1.3 to GA and expect that will happen in the next few days. This was about a week ago. If there are any issues, please let us know. So I thought that was really weird, that the fact the ISPs can update part of the modem, a Ubiquiti modem, that, I don't know, makes it feel a bit weird.
Yeah, well, I guess they're the part that they connect to.
Yes.
Definitely strange that either the user or Ubiquiti don't have control over that, especially if like for us in the US, Comcast, Xfinity, or whoever your ISP is, they can just update your software without you having any control over it. That's strange, but it does kind of make sense, because that is technically on their network. So that's like the demarc point, where that's like they technically control that part. But that is weird, and I feel bad for whoever hit that button to push the software, because they probably got in trouble. But that's, very interesting.
I just saw that the other day. I thought, oh, that's weird. Is there anything that you've been working on since we last recorded an episode of the podcast that you want to promote? We've been quite busy.
I've been busy in other areas. I do have updates for, there's a few new Aruba Instant On devices that I need to add to my comparison charts for that. I want to update my UniFi comparison charts, even though maybe they'll be obsolete soon. We'll see. But I did want to update those and kind of do some more cross-vendor comparisons. I didn't finish my UniFi Express review. I kind of had it 3/4 of the way done, but now that the Cloud Gateway is out, I think I'm just going to kind of piece those together. So keep an eye out for probably a review of those two devices in one. And the only other thing I want to do is I want to write about the limitation of the backplane, because it seems like there's a lot of confusion about what is the backplane, what is being limited to a gigabit speed. That applies to the Cloud Gateway Ultra. It also applies to the Dream Machine SE and Dream Machine Pro. So that's just something I'm working on. We'll see if that comes out. I haven't been writing as much as I want to, but hopefully I'll get back in the swing of things here.
Yeah, I finally got around to recording a video. It took about 2 days to make, but I recorded a video for HostFi UK Ultra. So I basically had a look at it, did some speed testing. I managed to get a open speed test thing running on my iMac. There's an app on the App Store which you can just install, and it becomes a server. It makes it a lot easier, because I think it was on Linux before. So if anyone's interested in doing that, that's quite an interesting way of doing things. So I managed to run some speed tests from my iMac to my phone, and wired from my phone. Yeah, there's all sorts of things in that video. So and what's quite cool is I used a teleprompter for the first time. So I'm recording the podcast today on a teleprompter to sort of make things a little bit more eye contacty with the camera. But I scripted a video for the first time, which was quite interesting. So I think it made the video a little bit better to watch, and less of me falling over my words, which is quite nice. So it's interesting to see how that goes. So
what are you using for a teleprompter? I'm curious.
I got the Elgato prompter. It's called, I think. So.
Oh yeah, they make good stuff.
And
I noticed. I try not to watch the YouTube videos of these shows just because it makes me cringe to like see myself speak. But I noticed the same thing. I'll be like looking at notes or like looking down, or I'm looking at your video and then I'm just like not making eye contact with the camera. It's tough. But yeah, teleprompter. Who knew?
Yeah, it's great. It's got an LCD screen built in, so I haven't got to use an iPad, and the phone is behind the mirror, so it looks quite nice. So I used it twice today. So just very quickly before we finish, have you seen in the last few days, Alta Labs have now got self-hosted controllers available?
No. Oh, yeah. I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah.
Is that all they released? Was self-hosted controllers?
I believe so.
Because I knew they had news. Like I know we're anticipating kind of a gateway routing platform from them.
Yep.
But I think so far the only hardware we've seen is a few APs and a few switches. But self-hosted controllers, wow. Okay.
Yes, if you just Google Alta Labs self-hosted, there's 2 YouTube videos from them. There's also a SPX Labs. I don't know if you've seen these videos. He does some Ubiquiti stuff as well, but he made a video, Alta Labs News, the other day as well. So there's like partner program beta stuff. But yeah, self-hosted. So it's interesting to see what they're doing in terms of other bits. Obviously, it is quite a Ubiquiti, ex-Ubiquiti heavy company. I think there's more Ubiquiti stuff there than I thought there was. Last episode, we discussed Chris Bulcher being there. I had a look on LinkedIn, and there's a lot more ex-Ubiquiti stuff than I realised. So it's very much
I think it's mostly. And yeah, they're. Have you used any of their products or anything? I think they're kind of the most interesting UniFi competitor currently, because, well, I guess TP-Link Omada is the other, near competitor. And I was digging into Aruba Instant On. I reviewed them maybe 2 years ago. It seems like not much has changed in 2 years. I think probably Alta Labs has had more progress in the past 2 years than Aruba Instant On has. So yeah, I'm definitely keeping an eye on that company. I wouldn't mind trying out their self-hosted controller and all their other new stuff.
I'm going to have to rename this show to Networking Chat instead of UI Chat, I think. Get other manufacturers in to talk about Alta Chat, yeah. Start a branch, sort of an Alta show. So.
Yeah. Cool.
As always, you can find this podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and more. For a full description of this show, visit the episode link in the show notes. I did mention it on Twitter as well, but if anyone has any Ubiquiti-related questions, please email them to info@theinterface.uk, and we'll go through those questions in a future episode. Me and Evan have had quite a bit of experience in the networking space and WISP, so if you've got any weird questions about Ubiquiti, just let us know. We'll try and answer them in the next episode. Thank you for joining me on this episode of UI Chat. Where can people find you online if they want to find out more about what you and what you do?
evmccann.net.
Thanks for listening to the UI Chat podcast. If you like what we do, follow the show on all the podcast platforms and YouTube. Give us a rating. This really helps other people find this show. Thanks again, Evan, and we'll see you again next time.
See ya.